So here's the blog, vbacourse.blogspot.com, and that's where you'll go to, like, for instance, if we let's come later in the semester, automating solver, like our very last day. So there'll be a file here that you can download, and then you'll notice this video has not yet been uploaded. You should expect it by Wednesday, December 13th at 4:45. If it gets to be 4:45 on December 13th, and I haven't posted it, a little button will show up here that says, remind the professor to post it. You click it, it will send me a text message that says you forgot to post the video. Because I'll forget. 3 or 4 times during the semester, I'll forget. So clicking that really will remind me to do it. So then, like once the class is passed, the video then will show up here. And then plus, like any file that I built in class, I'm going to give you the file as well that we built. So exactly what I did in class, you'll have access to, usually within an hour of the end of class. Is about how it normally goes. My only worry here, it'll be a little bit longer this time because I go from this class right into another class. So after I finish that class, I'm going to have to remember I've still got the video to post for this class. So if you get there and there's a button, please push the button. I was going to say repeatedly, but don't really press it repeatedly. Once will be enough, but I'll get it. Typically, I won't be in a place where I can post it until the next morning, but that's at least we'll get the reminder. Okay, questions on the blog? Files and videos for this course. Getting help from TAs and professors. So if you follow that link, back in the days of COVID, I made this for like my colleagues in the information systems department. I don't think any of them use it besides me anymore. So it's going to take you right to this class. It's going to show you the schedule for our TAs from last semester. Unfortunately, I was a little bit late getting our TA hired, and he's going through the process right now. So it turns out I can't ask him to do anything yet, including give me his office hours. So as soon as he gets through the hiring process, we'll get the office hours posted there. But here's the big thing, is that right down here at the bottom of this is where you say, hey, I need some help. And so you'll put in your net ID. You'll say, hey, what is this help about? Is it a particular project or just, help understanding a topic in the course or whatever? You are going to send me a Zoom link and then like some little note. This is just like, hey, if it's something like, hey, if my Zoom link times out, text me at this number or something. And then that's not public. I'm the only one who sees that, or the TA. And then the idea is I'll connect up with you. Again, when you submit this, like even if you submit it in the middle of the night, I will get a text message saying you're asking for help. Now, if you try to contact me after about 9 o'clock, I won't be offended by that, but my phone is charging in the kitchen where I can't hear it. And so I will be asleep. Professor John, you will go to bed at like 9 o'clock? Yes, I really do. I'm up almost always by 4 o'clock. So you tend to have much later hours than I do. I tend to have much earlier hours than you do generally. There may be some of you who are like going to bed late, waking up early. If not now, by the time the last couple of projects in this course come due, that will be the case for you. But feel free to, and what will happen is that when I get back to my phone, I see that text, I'll reach out to you. And so, if you do, and I have kind of easy access to your telephone numbers from like the university records. So if you're off the meeting, I'll probably send you a text message, especially if you put in the note, hey, text me if the meeting is over by that time. You'll be able to see your progress here in the queue. So right here, if this is blank, that means no one is ahead of you on the queue. And I thought that I had updated. I'm going to have to make sure that I'm connected onto the right one here, because I thought I'd cleared these out, a couple from last semester that got entered right at the end, I guess. So, but if there's no one in the queue, that should mean you're not waiting. And especially if you put that submission like during office hours, that TA should be working through this queue the whole time during office hours. So he doesn't have an office to go to, so that's kind of the best way to contact him. So that's how we're going to manage help, like getting help. And I'm also glad to help. So my TA is going to be thinking about you during office hours, but I'll be thinking about you all the time. And so if you text me, if I'm available, I'll set aside what I'm doing and try to answer your question. I'm not always available, but when I am, I will. So you should have an invitation here to join the Slack group for this class. So go ahead and follow that. The thing about Slack is that I'm glad to have you here. Slack is a way that you can ask questions of each other. Okay, so post a question there, and let's see, do I have the assignments? If I haven't made channels for each of the assignments, I'll be sure to do that straight away so that you can kind of ask in the particular channel for what you're working on. All right, so invitation, getting set up for the assignments. So part of what we're doing here with MyEducator, when we were first doing this grading with MyEducator, you would download a workbook that would have like the code that we needed to be able to grade your VBA assignments. Here's the problem. We were using VBA to actually do all the grading in MyEducator. And so we had to have some way to be able to give you that grader without giving you access to the code in the grader. So you can just go find through and change that if statement that just says give credit for everything, right? Because once you start learning about VBA, no doubt that's what you would do. Let me see if I can understand this grader and just change where it's actually checking these rules just to always return true. So it was like you downloaded a workbook where the project was locked, but then it would create another workbook for you to do your work in, and the workbooks would work together. And that worked pretty well for a couple of years. And then like virus detection software started flagging this, as like extremely dangerous stuff. And the truth is, we were doing some really crazy things, right? We're generating workbooks. We are sending stuff like without your express interaction. We're making calls to other websites in the background. And virus checking software was like, that's just illegal. And they just, they said you can't do it. And for a while, we tried to fight that battle, like work with these guys, say, listen, this is what we're doing. Quit blocking us. And as you might imagine, Microsoft was one of the main offenders for turning our stuff off. They were really difficult to work with. So we came up with a different approach. And the different approach was, instead of downloading a workbook that does all this, we're going to download an add-in. And so that's what this is. So this is going to allow you to download an add-in that you'll use for doing the grading. And so you'll get that downloaded. And then this video will kind of take you through the process of installing that add-in and seeing what it takes. So to be able to do assignments, you'll need to download this file, and you'll need to just watch this video to see how to do it. Okay, so recording class attendance. This link is old. I realize I haven't updated this link yet, but let me kind of show you how attendance is going to work in this class. Attendance is not required. I am going to give a teeny tiny little bit of extra credit to encourage those of you who are kind of on the fence about coming to class to come to class. My biggest worry when I said I'm going to post the videos is that everyone's like, I'm going to watch this at 1.5 times speed instead of actually coming to class. And so the problem is, if there's like one or two of you here in the class, it's really difficult for me to give the content in the way that's easily consumed on the video. I need an audience for that. So to encourage you to come to class, small, tiny amount of extra credit that comes along with it. And here's how we're going to do the extra credit. I am going to go to hopefully that opens. If not, I'll have to go look at it directly through Drive. Okay, good. You shouldn't be able to get to this by following that same link. And let me make sure we get onto the right day. Okay, so what I'll do is at the very beginning of class, I'll put up a quote, and we might talk about that quote for 2 or 3 minutes. And then you will go to a Google form and you will fill in your net ID. You'll choose off the list the person who made the quote and type in the year that they made. I found out that enough of you struggled typing in the year correctly that I built it so that it would put up a QR code that would pre-fill the person who gave the quote and the year. The only thing you have to put in is your net ID. So someone scan that QR code and tell me if that actually works. This is the first year I've done this. This is the first day I've ever done this. Does that take you to a Google form, and it has pre-filled Phyllis Wheatley and what's the year, 1774? Okay, but you have to put in your net ID, not your, by the way, is your net ID all numbers? No, it's the one that's not all numbers. If you look on your university ID card and you see it, an identifier there, that's not the one. It's the one you use to log into network resources, to university resources. How many of you have heard of Phyllis Wheatley? Phyllis Wheatley, she began her life enslaved. She was I don't know enough to know if she was captured from Africa and brought here, if she was born into slavery here. But she ended up in Boston with a family that was it was a really good family. If she had been raised like in Virginia, it would have been against the law for her family to have taught her to read and write. It was not against the law in Massachusetts. She was quite intelligent, and she was allowed to learn to read and write. Ultimately, she was manumitted, and she became a published author, and really one of America's first really well-respected poets. In fact, George Washington would say that and it's kind of hard for us to think about poets the same way they thought about them in the 18th century, but poets were like totally, really highly regarded. Maybe not quite rock star status, but close to it. And George Washington said that Phillis Wheatley was his favorite poet. And this is the quote: "In every human breast, God has implanted a promise, a principle, which we call love of freedom. It's impatient of oppression, and it pants for deliverance." As it turns out, part of my divine mission is helping people understand what it was that was so amazing about the founding generation, that in Doctrine and Covenants, section 101, I don't know, verse 78, 79, somewhere in the high 70s or early 80s, that God would say of the Constitution of this nation, that he said, "The Constitution of this nation, which I brought forth by the hands of wise men that I raised up unto this very purpose." That there was something so amazing about the culture of the American founding that it developed the people that were able to be the instruments of God to bring forth this Constitution. He could also say in 101st section why he brought forth the Constitution. And this is like something we don't often talk about in church, but any idea why? God says why he brought forth the Constitution. He said, "It is not right for man to be in bondage one to another." He said, I brought this Constitution forth to end slavery. That is the reason that God brought forth the Constitution. And so the quotes that we talk about at the beginning of class will be helping you to understand a little bit about the culture and about the American founding. It happens that that's part of what God wants me to do in this world, is help people understand about that. And so I'm going to kind of intermix attendance with that so that we can do that. It's a little bit troubling that sometimes people will come to me, years after, and they'll say, "Oh, Professor Allen, the best part of your class was that 2 minutes at the beginning where you talked about American history." And I'll think, "I taught you great things about Visual Basic and how to automate spreadsheets. And like the 2 minutes at the beginning of class was the best part." So they'd say, "All right." Okay, yeah, so I'll put that up. So we record attendance, I'll put that up. If you don't have a phone, oh yeah, by the way, this link, oh yeah, I think this is the right link. This link will take you to that same thing. But if you follow the link, you've got to choose the author and you've got to put in the year of the quote as well. So that is the right link. So you can either scan the QR code or you can follow that link. It's the same link every day. So the QR code changes to be pre-filled with the right information, but the static link is the same every time we go. All right, questions on this kind of stuff before we get started with our content? Yes. Yeah, let's talk about that. That's a really good question. In fact, was one of my slides, and I definitely want to talk about it. Let's just pop over to the syllabus for a moment. Course information, something, there's the book, grade scale, teaching philosophy, homework. Here we go. Homework and projects. So there are two kinds of assignments that we're going to have you do here in class. There'll also be 2 exams that you'll take. The two kinds of assignments are homework and projects. In the homework is here to help you learn the content. My intent is for you to do the homework on the day that the homework is due, to do the homework before class. The homework is like helping you get ready for class. It's to help you engage your mind into the content that we are going to learn about. They're meant to be fairly simple if you have done the reading. So if you've done the reading, you should be able to get on that homework and do the homework pretty quickly. But you're doing the homework before I have taught this stuff to you. The purpose of homework is to engage your mind to get you ready for class. Now, I don't make the homework due before class because it might be that you struggle with it for whatever reason. So the homework is always due at midnight, at the end of the day that we go over it in class. My intent is you'll at least engage it before class, and then if you still need to finish up a little bit after the class, you'll be able to do that. I hope that you will work together with other folks on homework. Get together in groups of 2 or 3, and I'm glad to have you even work together and come up with a single solution. Don't copy each other's solution. As long as you're each typing the solution, that's okay. You're not going to ever share files. You're never going to give your solution from one student to another. From time to time, that happens. And there's usually a pretty good explanation for it in the mind of the student, and there's never a good explanation for it in my mind. Often it's like this. My buddy was really struggling, and he said he was just going to look at it a little bit, and what does the buddy actually end up doing? Copying large parts of it and turn it in. And so the guy that copied that gets a 0 on the assignment, no questions asked. Well, what do I do to the person that supplied the work? What do you think? What should I do? I don't know. There's a part of me that says they get a 0 on the assignment too. And that may feel harsh. It feels harsh to me because you were trying to do something that you thought was good, and that guy promised he wouldn't do what he did, and then he did it. But anyway, just don't do that. Okay. So yeah, keep your files to yourself. So no copying, but totally work together. And the point is, you're trying to learn this stuff. It might be really helpful to work with someone to be able to learn this stuff. You want to work by yourself? That's fine too. Now, because the purpose of the homework is to prepare your mind for the lecture, to prepare your mind for the work we'll do in class. The purpose of the project is for you to show me that you have learned what we've learned in class. And so the projects have to be your own work. Now, I'm gonna ask you to draw a very fine line. And here's the line. I am okay with you talking about projects with your fellow students, even down to the level of algorithm. What's an algorithm? Algorithm is like step-by-step approach about how to do something, but the algorithm is not language specific. The algorithm is not, it's not a C++ algorithm or a Pascal algorithm or a JavaScript algorithm or a VBA algorithm. It is just a set of steps. So kind of talking about in the English language, how you might approaching it, that is okay. But where you draw the line is you cannot share any code. So nothing about VBA. How would I declare a 2-dimensional array? Well, it would be okay to kind of point that person back in class. Might be okay to remember to say, well, it's kind of like declaring a variable, but you're not going to say, just type in dim, the variable name, open parentheses, close parentheses, and in those parentheses, put the numbers. That would be too much. That's giving code. But talking about how you might go about something, that's okay. So I'm asking you to draw a really fine line there. No sharing of code on projects. Can you share code on homework? Yeah, as long as you're typing the code, not just copying and pasting. But on projects, no code. And of course, the exams will be all entirely on your own. Okay, I forgot what the question was when I went off talking about that. Did I answer the question? Yeah, so here, where are we? Here's day 1. Where's your first homework? First homework's not due for a while. Down here to create a web query. So that a homework. Now the idea here, I really want you to do this before class because I want you to figure out how to make a web query before class because we're going to be doing that in class and we're going to be kind of using that skill. At the end of class, you will totally know how to create a web query because we will have done it in class. Class will go better if you've at least tried that before. But then we'll get here to our first project, the Fallen Angel project. They just kind of all show here, but they'll say project if it's a project. They show here in the same column. But yeah, always due at the end of day. I used to make like homework due like right before class. And apparently there's some way you look at this stuff on Learning Suite where you see the day that it's due, but not the time that it's due. I don't even know where that is. Students might have been just fibbing when they said that, but like Professor Allen, we don't know if it's due before class or at the end of class. And look at our normal schedule. And I just said, great, everything's due at the end of the day. Okay, oh, by the way, you have a day off here coming pretty soon, like next Wednesday. I am going to be in Bountiful, actually, with an 18th century printing press teaching fifth graders about the Constitution. It's a couple of days before Constitution Day. And as it turns out, the midterm for this class is going to be administered in the testing center. There's normally a collective gasp when we say that. When I explain to you why I do it there, I think you'll appreciate it. But the fact is, we're taking a day that normally would be a day that we do in class, and we're pushing it over to the testing center. So the fact that I'm out of town and kind of cutting a day out here of the schedule, I don't feel too bad about. Let me tell you the real reason I'm sending you to the testing center for the exam. I used to give exams where you come in here and you code. Like you show me that you can do stuff in code in class. And the huge problem with that is there's always a handful of students that get stuck on something small at the beginning, and they end up spending so much time on that they fail the exam because of that, because of the time pressure. And so, like the way that I can remove the time pressure entirely is by saying, look, go over to the testing center, bring a sandwich, make a day of it over there. Take as much time as you want to do this test. But it does mean going to the testing center. By the way, like, can anyone tell me like what has been the cumulative inflation since 1991 when I started as a student here? Some of these finance people just might happen to know that on the top of your head. Yeah, 35 years ago. Here's the great news. Well, wouldn't it be great if you could buy something today that costs the same as it did in 1991? Here's what it is. Do you know what it is? You know what hasn't changed? The late fee for taking an exam in the testing center. It's still $5. So what a great opportunity to get rollback pricing. Some of you might be going, late fee, what's a late fee? So, it costs something to administer an exam over there in the testing center. But here's what the testing center says. If you administer this exam and there's no late fee, we will charge your department our cost to run the exam. But if you'll give at least one late day, in other words, take the test between Monday and Thursday for free. If you take it on Friday, it's a late day, you'll pay $5. We'll waive the fee because they know they will because half of you will take it on Friday. They know that. And so I think I paid a late fee for nearly every test I ever took when I was a student. It came down to I could study for this tonight, or for the meager price of $5, I could procrastinate one more day. Anyway, yeah, it's a testing center, and that's and it just seems to work. It seems to work better. So it's going to be multiple choice. That's a nice thing. At least you'll always be able to put an answer because it'll be entirely a multiple choice test. But I'll help prepare you for the test. We'll actually do a day where we're just reviewing for the exam before the exam and so forth. Okay, other questions? Other administrative questions? Yes. Oh, so the question is, what do we need to know to do the project? I had some TAs a couple of years ago who said, Professor Allen, it would really be great if in the description of the project, you would tell the students which lectures were particularly relevant for doing that project. Like in case they're not going to watch all of your videos, but only want to focus on the ones they need to watch to do the project, could you tell them that? I said no. Mostly because it was more work than I wanted to do. But if you wanted to do it, you could, and they did. So they went through and they said, these are the projects. So you'll say, make sure that the ones we really focus on for this project are going to be these three lectures. I'm not sure if that's what you just asked. Was it? Okay, yeah. So yeah, first project coming up, there should be, there's always going to be a link that will take you right to the My Educator page where that project is. So it's the same thing for the homework. You download this file, and then you'll work on it, and then you'll upload using the add-in that you installed from the first day of class. So there's no reason to do the projects before class that day because It's the projects are not, I don't have any, when they're due, they have nothing to do with what we're talking about, because the projects are always showing me that you've learned the stuff in the past. And I've scheduled things, I think, so there's never a project and a homework due on the same time. So I've kind of interleaved them. So you just got one assignment to do, whether it's a project or a homework. And hopefully you're not waiting till the day that it's due to start the project. For some of the earlier projects, you might be able to get away with it. For the later ones, you would be sunk by taking that approach. Other questions? Yes. So yeah, for the midterm, which is, kind of far off here to really worry about, but you might want to be thinking about this before the add drop deadline. So maybe we should talk about it. So it's entirely multiple choice. So no computer, no writing out of code. I don't want to grade that. Yikes. This is what it's going to be like. So there'll be, I don't want to get into too much detail on the midterm this early in the semester, but high level, there's going to be kind of a set of traditional multiple choice questions, which is like, suppose you needed to store information that had words such as camel, Nephi, Lemuel, Sariah. What would be the best data type to use for that? And I would like a list. Would that be like integer? Would it be long integer? Would it be string or whatever? And then you'll go, yeah, string is the right one for that. You'll pick string and you'll move on and you'll say, yeah, I got this, or got it going on. So those are kind of a part, maybe a third of the test will be that. And then most of the test will be, here's a block of code. What does it print in cell A1? So you kind of go through it and you'll say, okay, it's doing this, it's doing this, it's doing this. Following what it's doing, it's going to print 7 in A1. And there'll be a list over there, choose 7, you'll circle 7 and or you'll fill it in and you'll go on. Okay. So yeah, so you'll always be able to put an answer. I remember I took my first economics test. And you know how the testing center, you may not know this. How many of you have never taken a test in the testing center? Like the Scantron sheets that they use there, they have answers A through J. And when I took this test for econ, every question had A through J to choose from. And some of them were like A and B, A, B, and F. No, it's going to be like you choose the one answer that's right, and it'll be like 4 to choose from. Okay. Other questions? We do have some content to get to today. Let's see, we started at 2, so we go to 3:15. We got about 20 minutes. Yeah. Oh, I'm really glad you asked that question. How did it slip my mind not to mention it? So the answer is, yeah, you have to have the Windows version of Excel. If you have a Mac and you can run the Windows version of Excel on your Mac because you're running Windows on that, that's going to work. Now, as it turns out, many of the assignments and many of the things that we do in class, you can do on Mac. But Microsoft has, and I believe deliberately, has kept the Mac version of Excel and definitely the Mac version of VBA less capable than the Windows version. And several of the things we're doing in this class are simply not possible on the Mac version of VBA. I thought long and hard about saying, you know what, should we limit this down to just what's Mac compatible? Because so many of you are on Macs. And ultimately I decided, no, I'm going to teach you the really powerful stuff, even if it's not available on Mac. So for the assignments that you can't even do on Mac, you should be able to do like on a library computer or something, or get to a buddy's computer, or figure out how to run Windows on your Mac. Our department used to have an agreement with Microsoft that we could give you, there was like a free way to do virtualization on the Mac, and we could give you a version of Windows for free. And I guess Microsoft discontinued that program. So I can't give that to you anymore. It's not terribly expensive to set up, but it does take a little bit of work to do. So thanks for asking the question. It's a really important one to get down today. You're going to have to do this on the Windows version of Excel. Oh. So you can still, is that one you rented? Oh, no, that's the Apple. You rented that one. Hold it up for a second. Just take a look at it. Hold it high. Take a look at this glorious PC rented at no charge. Is there even like a small fee? You can still rent them for free. Where do you go to get that? The Ellsworth building, so the BYU surplus building. Yeah, okay. So I remember when they started that during COVID, and I guess they just, what a great service. And so they keep doing it. So yeah, that's I'm so glad you said that. Go to the Ellsworth building and get one for free for this semester. It's kind of nice. I would expect it to be like a brick, like really old technology. They have those too. Okay. Here, go today. Okay, it may be too late already. Is there another question here? No? All right. So what is the content for today anyway? Chapter 1, learning about macros, understanding objects and collections. So, all right. Let's go to the course textbook. Did I already go there? Oh yeah, here it is. Contents, chapter 1. What are we covering? Macros. Okay, so I guess let me just give you a little bit of background. Let me give you a little bit of background on macros. How many of you heard the term macro before? You're like, I've heard the term macro. What does macro even mean? Macro means small, but not that small. Where do they come up with this? Listen, in the very early days of spreadsheets, there were no macros. In fact, the first commercially successful spreadsheet program was called VisiCalc. And its successor, SuperCalc, was the program that when put together with the Apple IIe computer, before the Mac, before there was such thing as a Mac, the Apple IIe and VisiCalc, a SuperCalc spreadsheet, was the first thing that made businesses think, maybe these personal computers are something we should pay attention to. Because with that computer and that software, you could run a spreadsheet. What did it have? It had rows, it had columns. You could put a formula in a cell that referenced antecedent cells, that if you change the antecedent cell, the formula would update automatically. That is it. That is all it could do. And it made businesses go, wow, that's worth the $5,000 it will cost us to get that computer and that software running. What did they do with it, by the way? Did anyone know? Like what, the place that it dominated first, where personal computers were used in business? Budgets. The guy who's got to manage the budget. Can you imagine what it was like making a budget before there was a spreadsheet? Hey, you're going to have to cut everything by 10%. Start again from scratch. Yeah. So you can see why they're going, wow, this is a big deal. And so, but it pretty quickly became apparent that there were some sets of keystrokes that we did over and over, like the same sets of keystrokes. And so the very first macros, I'm not kidding you, the very first is before there was even such a thing as a mouse. I don't mean the rodent, I mean the computer peripheral. It was like, hey, I'm going to record a macro. And you'd be like, what cell do you want to put this macro in? I'm going to put this macro in this cell right here. And it would literally just record the keystrokes that you did. It would be a list of keystrokes. And then when you played back the macro, it would play back the keystrokes. And that's the way macros were until 1995. In 1995, Microsoft introduced a new way to think about macros. They did it in Excel version, was it version 4? I think it was Excel version 4. And they said, now instead of recording the keystrokes, we are going to record what you did in a computer language that will do what you did. You can go and modify the language and change it, and it will do different things. Does anyone know the name of the language? The very first macros, the very first, this kind of what they call application macros. They had keyboard macros that were the keystrokes, and these are called application macros. Anyone know the name of the language that Microsoft made when they were first doing application macros? Yeah. Visual Basic for Applications. It is exactly the same language that we're using today. 1995. 22 years, 23 years? How long has it been? 30, 27 years? If I had a spreadsheet, I could do math. The same language has been going around. Microsoft has been trying to kill VBA for 15, 16, 17 years. Here's the problem. Microsoft knows that a huge reason why they still dominate the spreadsheet market is because they have been so picky about backwards compatibility. And so is VBA ever going to go away? Maybe someday, but not anytime soon. But it's an old language. It's a pretty simple language. It's not a bad one to learn here. But they actually have new ways to automate. They got a couple of new ways to automate. How many of you have heard that Python is coming to Excel? It's not here yet, but it's been released like in pre-release versions to be able to play with. From what I can see by looking at it, you put Python in a cell. I haven't done it yet. I'm kind of looking forward to it. So it does seem a little bit strange. But let me just go ahead and open up Excel here. blank workbook. And I don't know what that was, but I just accepted it. I don't know what that was, but I just closed it. Right here, you see this tab right here, Automate? This is not VBA. This is JavaScript. So there's like a new environment for doing automation that's JavaScript-based, not Visual Basic based. It is still in its infancy, and it's nowhere near as powerful as VBA. These things, I think, get stored on your Microsoft account, so they don't follow the workbook, and so they've got a long way to go to make this to really be a competitor in terms of what VBA can do. But just realize, Microsoft is kind of going in different directions in terms of automation. So both JavaScript, by the way, what are the two most popular languages in the world? JavaScript and Python. And so they're bringing both JavaScript and Python into Excel. Okay, now let's go ahead and take a look at, we're just going to record a simple macro here. So yeah, when we say record a macro, we're saying we want to record ourselves doing something in Excel, and then Excel will write the language, will write VBA language for that. And the truth is, you probably, before too long in this class, rather than talking about macros, you'll be talking about VBA subprocedures. What's the difference between macro and VBA subprocedure? In terms of code, very little. In terms of starting salary, $10,000 to $15,000 a year. Because if you're talking about VBA subprocedures, you're saying, you know what, I really know what this stuff is, right? I'm a developer. I'm not just some tinker who's recording stuff and playing it back, but I'm writing applications in Excel. All right, so you need to come to your developer tab. How many of you, when you look at your Excel here, you have a developer tab? So some of you do already. It's not here. And here's Microsoft's philosophy. There is so much power available in VBA. Power that can be used for good or for evil, that we don't want mere mortals having access to it. And so the tab that lets you do everything with VBA, the developer tab, is just not there. And if you can't figure out how to show the developer tab, you have no business using the developer tab. So go figure it out. I'm going to show you today. This is the class, right? You're in a safe environment, so don't go crazy with it. Here it is. File, options. Down here, options. That'll bring up your Excel options. You've got something called Customize the Ribbon. And then right over here is the Developer tab, and it is unchecked. You check that, and then it'll work. You could uncheck, if some of these other ribbons are too pesky for you, like, you don't like that draw ribbon, you never draw, you could uncheck that. That home ribbon, if all those tools on the home ribbon are just, too pesky for you, you could get rid of those too. If your roommate leaves his computer open, you could go take off his, well, that would be a sin. You'd have to repent for that, but, well, I do encourage repentance though, so I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, we're going to turn on the automate, we'll say okay. And that will give us the, did I say automate? Developer. Turn on the developer tab, and then you'll have these tools which will allow us to start working with Visual Basic. Okay, if you're on a Mac today, let me see if I can remember. You're going to choose the Excel tab, the Excel menu. So not in the ribbon, you're going to go to the Excel menu. And is there a properties? Someone on your Mac, preferences, and then I think there's going to be a modify ribbon choice as well, yeah? Yep, and then it should be almost the same. That should get you there. And what we're doing today, you'll be just fine on your Apple, your Mac. Is there a question? No? Okay, so let's just kind of look at ourselves. We're going to record a macro, then we're going to go look at what it does. So, in fact, let's do this. I'm going to click right over here on macros. And let's see, no, I don't want to do that. No, I'm clicking on the first one, Visual Basic. So click here on Visual Basic. In fact, maybe on your screen, probably rather than trying to do this on your screen, let's just watch it on mine. So go ahead and do the macro that I do along, but we're going to kind of see what happens over here on the Visual Basic editor as we're doing the macro. So here's what we're going to do. Let's suppose that there's kind of some little snippet of a form that you need to do kind of time to time. And what you normally do is you've got it in some worksheet somewhere, and you go open the worksheet, you copy it, and you plug it in here. Maybe it's doing some kind of a summary thing where you've got to plug in some information. It's already got some formulas built into it. So what we're going to do is, instead of saying, yeah, keep that somewhere, you can just copy and paste it, we're going to make it so you can have a button in the ribbon. You can just click it, and it would just drop that thing in wherever your active cell is. So let's just go ahead and do that. I'm going to say I want it to go into, let's just say, let's say I want to put it here in B2, but I'm going to start in A1. So go ahead and start in A1, and then let's go ahead and just record ourselves doing this. So for this, I'm going to click on record macro. It's going to say, great, what do you want to call your macro? And I'm going to call it, I'll call it PNL, profit and loss statement. Let's call it PNL. It's got to start with, the name of your macro has to start with a letter. It can be any number, any combination of letters, numbers, and the underscore character, so spaces are not allowed. Oh, this is going to be my profit and loss. It's going to build my little profit and loss statement. I can put a shortcut key on this. Oh, it's for my profit and loss statement, so I'm going to put Control P. Wait a minute. What does Control P do? Not anymore, it doesn't. Now Control P runs this macro that we're about to record. Really? Do you see why you don't want my mother playing with this? She'll be like, son, my Excel won't print anymore. Come over here and fix it. And I'll say, yes, mother, I'll be right there. My mother lives just across the river from me. Like, there's a bridge. I can walk to her house. I do that pretty often. But never to do this because she doesn't even know about VBA. That's good. So it turns out there is only one combination of control and a letter that is not already used in Excel. Do you want to know what it is? It's M. So you could do Control M without overriding something else. That's good, because this is my macro, I guess. Call it Control M to run my one macro. But instead, I'm going to put in a capital P, and you'll notice that when I do that, it changes to Control Shift P. So Control Shift P now is what's going to invoke this macro. Are there some keystrokes that are like that built in? They're Control plus Shift plus something? Yeah, there are a few of those. I don't ever use them, so I don't feel too bad about overwriting them. But anyway, just beware. 3 places you can store a macro. You can store it in this workbook. You can make a brand new workbook for it, or you can put it in something called your personal macro workbook. If you put it in your personal macro workbook, it's actually just going to be in a special workbook that Excel, once you've created it, every time you open Excel, it'll open up this workbook and hide it. And any macro is available to you as long as it's in an open workbook. It doesn't have to be in the workbook you're using. This has to be in an open workbook. So if you put in your personal macro workbook, you're saying, oh, this is something I want to have available all the time on this machine. We're just going to leave it in this macro, in this workbook. And I can put a description, puts, income statement. In the active cell. Great. Now, as soon as I click OK, I have to be careful, because everything I do is going to get recorded. Well, the truth is, even before you click OK, everything is being recorded in heaven. But now it's going to be recorded by Excel too, so be on your best behavior. I'm going to click OK. I have no idea why it just opened another workbook. I said new workbook. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. I'm going to get back there real quick. Developer tab, record macro. I don't think it's been created yet. So PNL, Control P. I won't put the description in. And this workbook will say OK. Now, it has just opened. It's made a new module over here in my list of things I've got to work with. And here's module 1. So it has started making this sub-procedure. Oh boy, that's tiny. Tools, options. By the way, it's not recording stuff I do in the Visual Basic Editor while this is going on. Let me bump this up to like 18 points. What is it? Microsoft Sans Serif. MS. Sans Serif Western. That looks good. Okay, you should be able to read that a little bit better. All right. Now I'm going to click on B2 and it writes into the macro. And it sounds a little bit backwards. You just better say select B2, but it says, listen, with something, I want you to do some activity. And that's what it's saying. With this thing, range B2, I want you to select. And now I'm going to write in there, I'm going to put in revenue. And then I'll hit enter. Range B3, I'm going to put in expenses. Here I'll put profit. And here I'm going to put a formula that says profit is revenue minus expenses. Whew. All right. Now I'm going to say stop recording. So that button that used to be recorded is going to say stop. Very important to actually say stop recording. One time I was recording a macro at work. My wife called me. There was some problem with the plumbing at home. I might have even gone home to fix it. I came back. I forgot that I was recording a macro. And I went back to work at Excel. Like for the next 4 hours, I recorded everything I did. Hundreds and hundreds of lines of code. It was very beautiful. Worthless, but beautiful. So stop recording. And now we can see what it's done here. Now, the first thing that you're going to notice is that, wow, this is really putting it in B2, B3, B4. There is a notion of relative references that just like there is in like relative references for building a formula, that you could say, hey, if I was to record this code, it would record, hey, from the active cell, offset a certain number of cells and go do something. So you can do that. The code, those relative references are a little bit more complex. So we're not going to look at them today, but I just want you to get a feeling for what this is. Some object dot some method. So an important thing about this is we'll be using objects. Here's the definition of an object. And we work with objects like almost every day from here on out. An object is a thing. That's it. It's just something that you can manipulate through code. Objects have methods, things they know how to do. And so the range object here has a method called select. It knows how to make itself the active cell. I am not telling VBA to select that range. I am telling that range to make itself active. I'm invoking the functionality that's built into the range object to make itself active. The second property that's important for us to understand about objects, or the second characteristic, so they have methods, something it knows how to do, and they have properties. It's a value that describes something about the way the object is. And so this property formula, the R1C1's a little frustrating for our introductory course. Don't worry about that. You can think of this, we're putting a formula in here or a value, and we're just changing an attribute or a property of the object. And so I can put something into the property, I can read the property out. It's just like holding a value for me. And when I set that property, it may change something about the way the object appears. What does it change? What does that line, how does that line change cell B2? It changes what it shows. I changed a property of it, and it changed the way that that object looks. Same thing, same thing, same thing. And then over here, I'm just saying, hey, I'm going to put in a formula. So this is actually a relative formula. It's saying we want the value here to be 2 rows up minus 1 row up. That's what it says. All right. 2 characteristics, the things that I want you to get for VBA today, we can record macros. 3 ideas. Object, which are things. Objects know how to do stuff. Those are methods. And objects have properties, values that describe the way they are. Those are called properties. Object, method, property, class dismissed. I will see you on Monday. Oh, you're too kind. You're too kind. Thank you. Such a wonderful crowd. Yeah. Like how to be able to use the undo key after a macro is done. So, yeah, I think I'm not going to catch it. I was going to figure out how to do this. Okay, yeah, I'll do it. I'll let you know. Yeah, you can get stuck with that. I don't want to hear it. This one. Okay, just an interesting, students are doing what I just did. They're not learning. Okay. So that's going on. Okay. Thank you.
I'm enrolled in your IS class, and at the same time as strategy and separate thing. One is you said it's recorded. Oh. Second question, I hope and then if for some reason I ended up not looking at my